Hello and welcome to my audiovisual presentation. My name is Joseph Queenan, and today we'll be discussing how hip-hop's cultural power became a capitalist tool, lining the pockets of music business executives across the country. Throughout this presentation, we'll be primarily focusing on chapters 2 and 12 from Hip Hop America by Nelson George. Without further ado, let's get right into it. The hip-hop style and sound wasn't created in a studio, it was created on the street. It's a natural flow in response to abandonment, poverty, and the powerlessness felt by many marginalized Americans. In Hip Hop America, Nelson George reminds us that hip hop began as a sort of survival mechanism, something born in the rubble of urban decay and economic failure in the 1970s Bronx, New York. Since then, it has evolved through various stages. What began as a radical voice of protest gradually became a titanic cultural force, and then a commodity. Throughout this presentation, I aim to analyze how the genre's early legitimacy and authenticity eventually became the very thing that corporations have bought, packaged, and resold for profit. In Chapter 2, George recounts a personal memory of watching a b-boy battle in Brooklyn. These weren't some corporate-sponsored dance events. They were kids expressing themselves through breakdancing, rhymes, and beats in the face of neglect. He writes that hip-hop was the music of a city bankrupt of youth and culture, capturing the desperation and innovation of a generation left behind. Tarisha Rose's Black Noise explains that hip-hop was a creative rebellion against systemic oppression, responding to redlining, divestment, and over-policing in black communities. Jeff Chang, in Can't Stop, Won't Stop, also emphasizes these ideas. He describes hip-hop as an act of cultural self-defense, where kids use turntables and microphones instead of weapons. This raw, lived experience gives hip-hop credibility that would later become its most valuable currency. The game began to change with the release of Rapper's Delight. George highlights how this one track signaled that the music they were making had real commercial potential. Hip-hop was no longer just cultural, it was profitable. Soon, major brands were forced to take notice. Run DMC's endorsement deal with Adidas, as shown on screen, opened the door for corporations to market directly through hip-hop style and swagger. The energy and edge that gave hip-hop power were now selling shoes and sodas. Chuck D, in a Drink Champs interview, talked about how Public Enemy was never meant to sell. It was meant to spark critical thought. But even groups like Tiz couldn't escape the wave of commercialization sweeping through hip-hop. In Chapter 12, George digs into how hip-hop became a full-blown marketing machine. He argues that hip-hop artists don't get rich just from their art. They become part of a machine, selling everything from vodka to sweaters. Naomi Klein calls this brand hijacking and no logo. When corporations co-opt authentic culture to make their brands look edgy, rebellious, or somewhat real. Hip-hop was suddenly everywhere. It's on billboards, in clubs, on runways. Its message of resistance was diluted, often reduced to somewhat of an aesthetic choice. Zach O'Malley Greenberg, in Empire State of Mind, breaks down how Jay-Z turned his credibility into commercial empires, like Roc Nation and Ducey. Jay himself famously put it, "I'm not a businessman, I'm a businessman." Credibility sells. In the cultural capital from hip-hop, the weight of real experience, community identity, and credibility have become the new gold mine for business. As George argues, the very things that once made hip-hop threatening or unacceptable were flipped, rebranded, and monetized. A direct quote from RIAA's 2022 Music Industry Report is that total revenues grew about 6% to a record high $15.9 billion at estimated retail value, showing just how financially dominant hip-hop has become. What started in the Bronx as a resistance is now the most powerful commercial force in global pop culture. The question isn't whether it sells, it's whether it still speaks to those original causes. So, where do we draw the line between legacy and sellout? Hip-hop's strength has always been its ability to adapt and to evolve, while still selling the hard truths. Now, commercialization puts that strength at risk. When rebellion becomes a product, does it still challenge anything? Michael Eric Dyson in Know What I Mean says that hip-hop both reflects and magnifies the society that it comes from. It holds up a mirror, but sometimes that mirror can get fogged up by fame and money. George doesn't give us a clean answer. He just asks to stay alert, to remember where the culture came from, and to recognize when authenticity is being sold back to us at a markup. And I don't think I could put it any better myself. That'll be all, folks. Here's the works cited. 2 slides. Thank you for listening.